Not yet. Yeah, so part two. Glad we could get to part two with all the technical difficulties in part one. But looks like our Windows laptop is working and we got HDRP running. And yeah, we're going to be going over some advanced lighting and everyone's favorite ray tracing. So if you're ever curious on how to turn on ray tracing in Unity, it's actually a lot easier than it sounds. The Unity's made it pretty straightforward, especially with Unity 6. So we are using Unity 6 for today's demo. And yeah, let's just get into it. So Unity comes with a pretty nice HDRP sample scene that you can find in the Unity Hub. And you can usually find it by going to new project. And I already have it downloaded, but yours might be somewhere in the sample here to be downloaded. And it's the high definition 3D sample. So there's a lot of different concepts here that they demonstrate, how light probes work, how screen space reflections work. I believe they're not enabled here currently. They're just using reflection probes, volume lights, and etc. All that good stuff works really well in the HDRP. But let me show you a couple of things that are limitations of what you can do with traditional graphics techniques. So say we want to have reflection in this puddle, where we want to see like our little Unity orb here. So first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to lighting. And I'm going to go to my volume global. So if you remember like post-processing or any of that stuff in the past, post-processing is now not a thing anymore. It used to be something that you put on the camera, if you remember, and you had ambient occlusion and bloom and all that stuff. Well, all that stuff is now part of these things called volumes. So the volumes are actually represented by, you can have a global volume, and then you can have volumes that represent like a specific area. So like this area is one volume right now, for example. But we're going to be working with the global volume really quick here. And let's see here if we actually have some screen space reflections. No. So let's click the global volume, and I'm going to add an override. And I'm going to add a screen space reflection. So the first thing that's going to tell me is the current HDRP asset does not support screen space reflection. So what you're going to do is you're going to open up that. And so you'll see that we have a few different types here. Now, it goes from low, medium, and high up to ray tracing quality, ray tracing RTG quality, and then some more there. So if I scroll down here, I'm going to find screen space reflection, turn that bad boy on, and there we go. So we have some nice screen space reflections. So if I disable that, enable that, you can see that, right? Looks pretty good, right? I mean, it's a reflection, it's in real time. What's the issue though? I'm not sure how this is all going. So the issue is screen space reflections are done from, as the name implies, screen space. So it's taking the pixels that are actually currently visible on the screen, and what it's basically doing is it's flipping them upside down, and it's giving you a screen space reflection based on their view vector. What happens if I look down? Oh, where'd it go? No more reflection. Right? So this is actually a big problem in a lot of games, and they currently, most games actually use screen space reflections up until very recently with, ray tracing cards, and, AMD is now also supporting ray tracing. So most modern games do have ray tracing, but before that, screen space reflections were the way to go, and they do look pretty good, especially like, for example, if you have a racing game or something, you're mostly kind of looking from the top. You're probably, most of the things are just going to be flying past you. You're not really going to ever notice effects like this. But if you are playing different kinds of games, or if you're doing demos, this just doesn't quite cut it. You can see that kind of like half, I cut it. Kind of half my character's cut here. So what can we do to fix that, right? So what we can do is we can turn on ray tracing. So let's go over to our quality settings and move up to ray tracing. So if I toggle this one, hopefully my computer doesn't explode when I do this. I'll just give it a second. And there's actually a lot of cool features in Unity's ray tracing. It'll do ray tracing for ambient occlusion and shadows. It'll do ray tracing for reflections, all sorts of fun stuff like that. So let's let it do its scene view repaint. All right. So now we have ray tracing enabled. My computer did not, in fact, explode. And if I look down, you can see that the sphere is still there. Why? Because it's actually using rays to calculate where the sphere is. Even though the sphere is no longer in my screen space, the sphere is still there, and the rays are still bouncing. So you can see that this character, no matter what angle I look at him from, you see that? That's not possible with screen space reflections. It's only possible with ray tracing. So that's pretty cool. So I'll show you some other cool stuff here. Now, who knows what ambient occlusion is? Who likes ambient occlusion or things like that? I love ambient occlusion personally. But this is ambient occlusion. Okay, so this is ray traced ambient occlusion. Now, what happens is you can see that the way that the pillar kind of does a little bit of shadowing there. With regular ambient occlusion, it doesn't. So ambient occlusion, as you know, it's kind of just doing a little bit of a calculation between how close two parts of a mesh are, or how close like something in a depth map is, and you'll kind of get these nice little edge corner effects. And I'm just going to increase their radius and everything, so you kind of see that, and you can see that it's not quite accurate. You see how it's like catching behind that pillar, because it sees that it's a depth map and it's catching the radius, and it's assuming, well, that should cast a shadow, right? Well, it doesn't look quite right when you look around it. And it's more subtle, obviously, when you lower the values. But with ray tracing, this will actually be correct from any angle that you look at it, because it's actually doing real-time global illumination, which is super cool. But yeah, like the intensity and all that stuff actually works as intended. Ah, there it is. Beautiful car. So it does come with like this shadow, so I'm just going to kind of get rid of these shadows because we don't really need them. So yeah, I think it has a missing material too, but let's turn that off for now. So yeah, got a nice car here. It's also nicely reflected. Obviously, if you want to kind of, have that a little bit of a cyberpunk kind of feel to your materials and such, you could let me just make sure we got the right one here. I believe it's this one. A lot of these games have been very much taking advantage of these features by making everything super shiny and metallic, which you could do if you'd like. And that was kind of what I had in the slide demo. But let's look at like this interior of this car, for example. So it still seems like there's some missing textures, missing materials, but that's all right for now. So let's go back to our render settings, and let's do graphics again. Sorry, quality, and let's put it back to medium again. And give it a second to do its stuff. So, as you can see, yeah, you can definitely see the missing materials now. Interesting enough, you couldn't see them when they were so nicely well lit. But you can see where the ambient occlusion fails now, right? Notice how like the ambient occlusion is kind of occluding like above the headrest and on the back seat here. But when you turn your head behind it, it's gone. So imagine doing that in VR, something like that. Your immersion would break pretty easily. So you can see, like on the outside, it's doable. You could do it, and you can use screen space reflections and all that. But the moment you go inside, this just doesn't make any more sense, like at all. You're inside a car. So when you have real global illumination, and let's bump that up even one more notch, you'll actually get something that looks a lot more like real life. Like even the missing material as well. For all we know, that's someone's purple paint job you know, but it's well lit, so you can't tell. Oh yeah, and we have to turn off our reflection probes too, which we have a ton of them. Oh, where is it? There it is. Okay. Now I'm not sure why it's the calculations are a bit low. I think it might be doing some scaling on performance and the amount of rays, particle raycast budget. But let's try a simpler scene so I can demonstrate this effect. And let's create a new scene, and it's just a basic outdoors, which is, you'll recognize as the same scene that we started with, but that was URP. And let's try to create a plane here. Make that a mirror. Darn. All right, so yeah, so if you set your index of refraction, it's kind of like how thick the glass is, a bit like how much it warps. But you can see that you'll actually have a really nice proper glass, and this will actually work properly with water as well. And it is actually bending the light rays through it when it reaches the actual camera. There's a transmittance color as well, so you can actually, you know, change the color. But now you can see that it's not rendering anymore inside the mirror because it's already one pass, and the second pass is apparently it's just a little bit too much for it. But let's say if I kind of create my little fun house of mirrors here. I can't see the other mirrors, right? Or the sphere inside the other mirrors. It's one bounce currently, which is already more than enough, but you know, it's pretty much there. Now there is like one more final boss, and this is not really meant for gaming yet, but it will be at some point soon. And it's, does anyone here use Blender or Blender Cycles? So you're familiar with Cycles render engine? It basically uses path tracing. You know the like noise that it makes, and then it, like when it renders. So it's a physically accurate renderer. It actually simulates how light behaves. So if I turn on path tracing,
what does it do in an infinite mirror situation?
it will render up to a certain point, and there's some ways to tweak it to create bounce. But you see what's happening right now is I'm actually,
that's what Unity or Blender does.
Yeah, it's basically creating a path traced image, pushing it for a mobile GPU. But that's your next step above ray tracing. And in reality, the ray tracing that you see is ray tracing, but it's not true to life ray tracing that we've had like in render engines in the past. You've actually were able to set many more bounce levels, increase the samples to get like, you know, a nice fluid simulation in a glass bottle doing a bunch of different things, for example, in a funhouse mirror environment or something like that. It was pretty hardcore. But yeah, some of this stuff like runs in real time now. And I was pretty happy to find that it exists in Unity as well. So there is path tracing inside Unity.
Where did they put that in?
I believe it's all kind of came along with the ray tracing update. But that's still a work in progress, and I think this is probably like the final boss of rendering. Our URP samples, our mobile samples, everything we did so far has been done in Unity. So whether you want to do something like really lightweight or you want to literally render stuff like using path tracing, you could do that in Unity. Not related to this lecture, but I've seen some pretty cool stuff that Unity 6 is doing with automatic LOD mesh generation and stuff like that. So, you know, I think if you want to create like a super optimized game, like even with URP, you can create some pretty nice looking stuff. Like I've seen stuff come out of URP that looks like some Unreal Engine games. And then I've seen some stuff that comes out of HDRP that doesn't really look like much. So I guess the gist of it, it's really like the tool and how you use it. We do have a special announcement. Woo! Yeah, so yeah, thank you all for coming out. I know it's a rainy day and a little bit of a rough start to the presentation, especially with the little MacBook that couldn't. But yeah, so our announcement. So we have a Unity mini jam coming up soon, sponsored by Unity. So write that URL down or scan that QR code. We're asking all talented developers to sign up. The mini jam will be in a weekend format. Unity will be sponsoring this. There will be Unity swag and stuff like that. But the first one is just a mini jam, and it's going to be leading up to a larger event that we want to do. So yeah, sign up now, and then we'll, there'll be some questions there, like just put up like some stuff you've worked on, maybe some stuff you want to do, and then we'll set something up. We'll reach out. We'll get a space, and we'll all jam out for like a weekend. You can make a game, you can make a VR app, AI app, whatever you like, and we'll just kind of go from there. And besides that, did everyone get that? I was looking for that. The tiny URL is super easy too, by the way, since it's just if you don't want to scan the QR code, but figured QR code, why not? And then we're almost at 3,000 members, so thank you so much for being amazing and being a part of this community. Please do reach out. Our emails are right there. My email, Pockets. We have our domain now too, so that goes to the meetup. I was able to snag that. Join the Discord too to connect with other UnityNYC members. There's people on there that are super talented as well. They attend some of our meetups. I'm sure some of you are already on there and you speak to each other. There's some work opportunities that come up there as well. There's people also looking for work as well if you're hiring. And when this jam comes and all that stuff, we will have gifts for you as well from Unity. Big milestone, 3,000 members. Almost, I think about 10 or so. Cool.
On the Discord, or honestly, feel free to reach out. Any way that you want to help build this community, just like reach out, and it's entirely volunteers through and through. So there's some great resources. So pay it forward and ask, and we'll find people for you as well if you need anything.
Yep. All righty. Thank you all.